Hello and welcome to Think About It. I'm Sylvia Henderson, your host, and I invite you to tune in, take what you see and hear, and, well, think about it. So today, our program is about presentation, but it's how you present yourself to actually present your best image. And we're going to cover, if you're a business owner, how do you present yourself to your best advantage? If you're in a company working for someone else, how do you present yourself so that you represent your organization's image, but also so that you can move ahead and accelerate your career? And I have the most wonderful guest to talk about that. Her name is Allison Shapira. So don't go asking about Allison Shapiro. It's Allison Shapira, and she is the founder and CEO of Global Public Speaking. And you're going to hear an amazing story about how she got to do what she's doing. So Allison, welcome to Think About It.
Thank you, Sylvia. So nice to be here.
I'm thrilled. We are both busy in the speaking world, and to get finally connected, to settle down and have this conversation, I am honored that we finally did it.
Thank you for the invite.
So the question that I always ask at the very beginning, because people want to know, so how do you do what you do? How did you get to do it? That's my question to you. Without having a bio, what got you to have your own business helping people present their best selves?
Well, I started as an opera singer. So that was my first career, studying opera so that I could perform on stage. And I wound up leaving opera for a number of reasons, but I realized when I left the field of opera that everything I learned as a singer made me a really good speaker and an even better coach, because as opera singers, when we're not singing, we're critiquing other singers. So I had learned how to listen to people, watch people, and observe subtle shifts that would influence how they came across to others.
And I'm just picturing, so I'm picturing the I don't know if it's the illusion or the generalization of the opera singer who is, you know, staid and proper and has good comportment and all of that. So did that, like, is that what you learned and what you help others with?
I learned stage presence.
Okay.
I learned how do you stand on stage, hold your own, and then connect emotionally with an audience. As a singer, that's what you do through music. I realized as a speaker, we have to do the same thing, but we do it in different ways. So as singers, we're interpreting the composer's message and interpreting that to an audience. As speakers, we have to write our own message. We're not reading someone else's unless we're communicating the company talking points, but still, we have to deliver our own message, but still connect with an audience in a confident and authentic way.
I'm also imagining that the performance background, you have to learn to enunciate. You have to learn how to speak so that many people understand, regardless of region, regardless of nationality. You do international work also.
A lot of international work too, yes.
So how, because we're about not only your story, but tips for the listener or viewers, how do you help people not get rid of their accents, but speak so that they are understood by a wide range of people and somebody's not sitting there going, I want to fill in because you're talking too slow and all of that.
Right, you're absolutely correct in that we want people to be able to understand what we're saying. It doesn't matter whether we have a regional accent or a foreign accent. We could simply be one of those very fast talkers who speaks so fast that nobody can understand what we're saying. So one thing I did learn from opera is how to enunciate and speak very clearly and concisely, because many times you have people in the audience who don't know the words and they want to understand the song. And it could be in Italian or German or French, but in public speaking, we're communicating a language that we want our audience to understand. So our pacing is critical, speaking clearly is critical, and it's okay to have a foreign accent or a regional accent. There's nothing wrong with that. What we don't want is for the accent to get in the way of us being understood, and that's where pacing and diction come into play.
Okay. And how about breathing? Because I'm thinking performing is also breathing. I am mildly asthmatic, and I know that sometimes when asthma hits, my speaking is less effective.
So breathing is critical when speaking. Certainly it's critical when singing, and that's how I learned breathing techniques as an opera singer. But now I use those same techniques when I'm teaching public speaking, because breathing has two main benefits. The first benefit is that it calms you down. Breathing techniques physically relax you so that you can be more present when you speak. And the second benefit is that the breathing techniques help you project your voice. So if you want to speak up in a meeting and you're a little nervous about it and everyone's talking over each other, take that nice deep breath and then use your voice to project yourself into the conversation and hold the floor so that people don't interrupt you.
I would imagine, and this is not getting into the gender thing, but I would imagine for women who typically in meetings, I know when I used to do communications training, I'd get asked a lot. We have ideas from other women. We have ideas. We mention them in meetings. They're sort of like, that's okay, or that's a good idea, and they keep on going. And then as soon as a guy brings up the same idea, yes, let's do that. So I would imagine some of those techniques would help those who feel like they're not heard. We'll get away from gender. Those who feel like they're not heard, be heard.
It's very interesting. I actually do a fair bit of work with women's only groups, and that is an issue that every single group all around the world mentions. And there are some interesting techniques as well that I teach people. For instance, when somebody else mentions the same idea, you can very politely say, I'm so glad we're in agreement that that's the right way to move forward. Or one of your colleagues can say, oh, that's great. That sounds like what Sylvia said a couple of minutes ago. I'm really glad there's consensus here. So those subtle shifts can be really helpful. But in general, men and women can use their voice to speak up so that their voice isn't minimized, which means their ideas aren't minimized.
So I like how you're talking, what you're saying and how you're talking about it, because when people hear be a better speaker, quite often they're thinking, oh, that person who's up on stage. That's a very small group of people.
Right.
So the speaking is more the sales rep who needs to convey a message, the entrepreneur who's trying to get money, or the person in the company who's trying to move up the corporate ladder. What do you coach? How do you coach people, or what are some of the things you say to people in order to develop their their speaking, not their speaking?
Right. I define public speaking as any time we speak with one or more people with some goal. And you've very aptly described it as in all those different situations, whether you're an entrepreneur or in sales or trying to move up in your organization. I always ask people before they speak, whether it's preparing for a sales call, walking into a meeting, or walking on stage, to answer 3 questions.
Okay, what questions? Yeah.
First question, who's my audience? Who am I speaking to? Because when I understand who I'm speaking to, I know what language to speak. Do they speak the language of my industry? How do they feel about my subject? So that's the first question. The second question is, what's my goal? What do I want people to do as a result of hearing me speak? Because then I can have a very clear ask or call to action. And the third question is the most important, the biggest differentiator, and the least, I would say the most surprising question. And that's why you? And what I mean is, why do you care about what you do? It's not your years of experience, it's not your title, it's not where you went to school, it's why you care. And when you answer that question and look inward, why do I care about this? Then you walk into the meeting, you walk into the pitch, you walk out on stage with a powerful sense of purpose. And that animates your voice and your body and makes your speech, your conversation more engaging.
So when you said, why do you care? Why me? I'm thinking, why me, my qualifications?
No, and people default to their qualifications. Well, what do you do when you enter a new industry? What do you do if you've been out of the workforce? What do you do if you're just out of school? Your credibility doesn't just come from what you've done. Your credibility also comes from why you care, and that's how you connect with an audience in a much more authentic way.
Ah, okay, yeah, you're right. That was a surprising third question. And in my past life, I was deep into the corporate world as a corporate employee. Like I guess they were a top 50 company way back then. They were the Google of their day, we'll put it that way. And the why do you care would never have come up in that old line corporate structure. So nowadays I hear about storytelling and how telling stories influences the effectiveness of your message. Do you get people frowning about the why do you care? Because that sounds a little wooey.
I see where you're coming from. Actually, I do a lot of work with very large Fortune 50 companies.
Okay.
I always talk about why you, and that's always the biggest surprise and one of the biggest takeaways for them. It's not, with some companies, it can't be why are you passionate about what you do. With the nonprofits, I can say why are you passionate? That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But why do you care means what gives you a sense of purpose in your work? What gets you up in the morning? Nobody only does what they do for a paycheck. A paycheck is nice, but especially if you don't,
yeah, if you're not
getting one. Anyways, it's not just about getting paid. It's about what makes you feel inspired when you get up in the morning. And anyone can relate to that. Even if they're not passionate, there's got to be something that they can connect with, that they care about what they're doing.
Okay.
And if they don't care, sometimes they're not in the right business.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. So I can definitely relate to that as an entrepreneur, because if you don't care about your own company, why are you doing it? I can see that in the nonprofit world too. If I'm a sales rep, I've got to care because I've got to speak because it's my company's message, not necessarily because I'm passionate, or is that a false statement?
Well, why are you proud of the product that you're selling? Why are you excited about what your customer's business is and how your product or service can help them grow?
Okay.
So some of my bigger corporate clients, when I'm working with their sales professionals, it's what is it from your own background or experience? Did you grow up in a small business, a family-owned small business, and that now you're selling to small businesses and you can share an example of something you learned from your family, and you use that in your pitch to that small business. Okay. And all of a sudden, you're not this big, large corporation. You're a human connecting with another human.
Okay. So we're going to have to take a break. When we come back, you've written a book to help people learn about this. So we're going to talk about that when we come back.
Sounds
good. That, we'll be right back.
If you store your guns properly,
I'll feel safer when I'm playing outside.
Safer when walking home.
I won't have to tell so many family members. I'm sorry.
I won't hear as many scary stories.
And I won't have to tell my kids. This isn't a drill.
Please.
Please.
Do it for us.
Your family, friends, and neighbors are all counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. Remember, always, lock it up. Visit ncpc.org.
Hello, welcome back to Think About It. I'm still Sylvia Henderson, your host, and we are still talking about how to present your best self, whether you're in sales, whether you're in management or leadership positions, or whether you've got your own company. So I hope you've been watching so far, and we're going to continue with our guest, my guest, Allison Shapira. So Allison, welcome back.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Even though we didn't go anywhere.
We've been right here.
That's right.
We're still here.
So before the break, I mentioned that I dropped a little hint that you've written a book.
Yes.
And it's called Speak with Impact, How to Command the Room and Influence Others. Talk about the book.
It is a book I have been wanting to write for a long time. I was looking for a practical how-to guide for the busy professional moving up in their career who wants to use their voice to speak up at work or in their community. And I couldn't find such a book, so I decided to write it.
All the books about presenting and speaking and...
There are great books out there, but they're about 9 things to keep in mind when you speak, or a collection of great tips, but nothing walking you through the process of writing, practicing, and delivering a speech. So I wanted something methodical and practical that I could give to my clients and let them apply on their own.
So with the book, I'm going to ask for a couple of juicy things in that book that people should say, got to get that now. I'll ask that first, and then
Sure.
move that into some of your teachings or what you do with the book.
Mm-hmm. There are lots and lots of tips,
sure.
because the idea is if you have a speech or presentation coming up, the book gives you a process. And a lot of times we get nervous about public speaking because we don't know what to do to prepare. But if you tell me how to prepare, I'll sit down, I'll prepare, and I'll do a good job.
Okay.
So one of the best things you can take away from that book is a process that you can use anytime you have a speech or presentation or even a difficult conversation coming up.
I love systems and processes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. So it provides systems and different types of processes depending on what works for you. And then I include stories of ways I've used these with others and stories of people I've worked with and what I've learned from them. So I wanted to put stories into the book to make it more relatable to people as well.
So then what do you do when you're actually working with someone? Do you work with a single person to help them develop their message and present it? Or do you work with a team on team presentations? Because that's a different thing,
Right.
Especially with the transitions and who says what and who does what.
Right.
So I talk about kind of what you do and then how you integrate your process into that.
Sure. It's all of the above.
Okay.
So I'll work one-on-one with one individual who has a speech or presentation coming up, or I'll work with a group of people who may be presenting together, or a group of people who present individually. And we come together and we do a workshop on how do you use these presentation skills on the writing side and also on the delivery side. We talk about messaging and content creation, and then we also talk about delivery and vocal presence and vocal projection as well.
Okay. So without giving away the ship, because we need to get the book, what is this process? Is there a high-level thing you can share with folks so that they think they're going to go off and do it without getting the book, but they really need the book to figure it out?
Sure, and it starts with the 3 questions that I asked you
Okay.
earlier, that I told you about earlier. That's the underpinning of the entire process, is asking those 3 questions and then using the answers to those questions to kickstart the creative process so that then the writing is a lot easier. And I talk about writing as not something that you do in a panic the night before the speech.
Oh, gee, really?
I know, you're shocked. It's an iterative process that you do a little bit of at a time. So we walk through that process, and then I provide tips on how do you practice delivery so that it looks natural. It isn't natural. But the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. And a lot of people feel like body language and eye contact, you either know it or you don't.
And when you have this word, you go this way, and then when you say this word, you go that way.
Right.
I mean, I remember some of the teachings. And
Right. It all depends. It depends on the language. It depends on the occasion. It depends on the audience and their culture. It depends on where in the world you're speaking. So this provides a lot of general guidelines for how to approach it and then ways to practice it according to what will work best for you personally and for your audience. And then there are also those breathing tips that I mentioned, which come from my operatic training. So I teach people the process of learning to breathe to calm their nerves and project their voice.
Because some viewers are in an organization, company or nonprofit, doesn't matter, in an organization, they need to communicate both up to their management and executive team. They need to communicate across to their peers so that their peers, even though they don't have any control over their peers need to accept their ideas and act on them. And they need to talk possibly down in the hierarchy. How do you adjust for the different levels that you have to present to?
It all comes back to those three questions.
Know your audience.
Who's your audience?
Okay.
Because you could speak, if you're speaking to two different executives, they could have two very different communication styles. But as a general rule, what I find and what my clients find is that when they're speaking up to the boss, usually in an American business setting, the boss wants you to get to the point. Start with the conclusion. Start with your recommendation and then unpack it. And so I have found that when addressing leadership, it's helpful to be clear and concise, get to the point, and then you can take their questions and unpack the details if they want them later.
True.
Then if you're speaking to your peers, what information do they need to know? How can you present information in a way that doesn't make them feel like you're bossing them around? Can you use more collaborative words such as, perhaps we can think about it this way. What if we were to do this? This is my recommendation. What do you think? And then when you're asking for feedback, what you're doing is making the other people feel validated, which makes them feel important. And then when you're speaking to someone who is
lower in the
I hate
hierarchy.
to say speak
I know,
down
that's why
because you're not speaking down, but
that's why I define
let's say
that.
a direct report.
Okay.
Then you can be a little bit more directive. What I'd like you to do, you could help me by doing this. How about if we try this? And you can use language that's a little bit more directive, but still polite. And understanding what information did they need in order to effectively fulfill what you're asking them to do. So it all starts with who's your audience and what's your goal, and the answers to those questions drive your messaging and the structure of your message.
Yeah. So how do people get the book?
They can find it in many places. It is on Amazon, it's at Barnes & Noble, it's at Target, Books A Million. They can find more resources at speakwithimpactbook.com, which has a lot more information on the book, and also a free chapter download as well.
Speakwithimpactbook.com. Interesting. And so to reach you and to engage you, how does that happen?
People can find me at my website, which is globalpublicspeaking.com. And they can reach out with any questions. We're also active on all the different social media channels as well, and we're out there trying to promote the power of public speaking. So people can always ask us questions through social media, and then we respond and answer those questions and help them however we can.
So you've got a team. You speak on stages.
Yes.
You coach, and you do training.
Correct.
But it's not you all the time. You've got a team of trainers.
I have a team. I'm the founder and CEO. I do speaking keynotes, workshops, coaching, and then I have a team of trainers and coaches who work with me as well, and we're all trained in the same methodology. They use the methodology of the book.
Okay. So what, as we're coming sort of to a close anyway, last few minutes, what's like one or two things you wish you just want people to get in their heads about speaking and presenting themselves, presenting their messages? We learned about the "can I see you naked" kind of thing, and it's like, no, I don't want to do that. I know. So what do you want people?
There are two main components of speaking that I'd like people to take away, and both of them are in the book. And the first is that first question, the why you. Every time you're speaking, we're not robots connecting with other robots. We're human beings. And so the more you allow yourself to let your genuine enthusiasm and interest show, it means you're not going to be scripted. It means you're not looking down at your notes, you're looking at the audience. But the more authentic you are, the more powerful you are as a speaker, which means the better the relationship of trust you'll build with your audience, whether they're a client, your boss, or an entire conference room full of people. That's the first tip.
Okay.
The second component that I want people to take away is the phrase, pause and breathe.
Oh.
So when we're nervous, what's the first thing that goes?
Well, the breathing.
The breathing. We forget to breathe and we start to talk like this.
And when I'm nervous, it's the ums and the uhs, and I got to fill in the blanks. And oh my gosh, if I'm quiet, they're going to think I lost my place.
Exactly. So pause and breathe, which is what you do before you go on stage, before you walk into a meeting room. It's also what you do when you lose your place and you get flustered. pause and breathe. You could take a sip of water. You can look down at your notes, find your place, take that nourishing breath, and then keep going. And it helps you refocus so that you can stay present and centered in the room.
Quick story?
Okay.
You got a quick story of success?
I've got lots of stories.
Well, I know that, but that's get to the point.
What kind of story?
I don't know, something that would make the viewer say, "Oh man, that's me. I gotta get me some Allison."
Allison or her team.
Oh,
or her team. I get emails from people. So I'll have one email that I got recently from a client of mine was incredibly nervous about speaking and was something of a wallflower. She didn't like speaking up at work. So here's an example. She went through our workshop and learned how to speak more powerfully at work, which was very helpful for her. And then outside, her child's school was in danger of losing a special program that her child was in.
Okay.
And at the community meeting, she used the same public speaking skills to speak up on behalf of that program. And in the news, it was her voice that was quoted on behalf of parents.
Oh, awesome.
That's what makes me feel really happy.
Awesome, because that came across authoritatively and confidently.
Yes.
Neat, neat. So once again, the name of the book and how they get it.
Speak with Impact, How to Command the Room and Influence Others. It's available on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, and people can get a free download of one chapter at speakWithImpactBook.com.
So as we're closing and filling in a little bit of time left, when you say command the room, I know I hear that term a lot. I've been told, wow, you come in and you command the room even though you're only 5'3". What do you mean by that? Kind of real quickly, command the room.
It means you have such a sense of presence and purpose in what you say and how you say it that people can't help but pay attention.
Okay, cool. Allison, thank you so much for being with me today and for sharing your message.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Sylvia.
Awesome. And thank you for watching Think About It, and I look forward to seeing you next time. As always, I invite you to tune in, take what you've seen and you've heard, and, well, think about it. Until next time, make a great day.